With these opening notes, the curtain draws on Willard and the Tapeworms' SELF-iSH, a 2016 album that delves into the maddening depth of sanity and identity. Even if the themes and lyrics are not as clearly understood on the first listen, the accompanying intensity of the music is. What starts as a calm and melancholy sound picks up speed and ferociousness until Wood is literally screaming by track 3. I'm not going to pretend to be a music expert, but I can say that the gritty blend of piano, hard rock, and jazzy horns sounds fantastic. No song is bad or even mediocre, and my least favorite, the climactic Dr. Sunshine is Dead, is perhaps the album's most famous track. If you take one thing away from this video, go listen to the album. Go listen to the album. Trust me, if you want to pause and save this for later, it'll enrich your experience to be familiar with each song before I do a deeper dive. And believe me, there's a whole lot of deep to dive in. Each song alone is dripping with religious, psychological, and philosophical reference. But as a whole, it tells the story of a man convinced he's lost his sense of self, and the lengths he goes to find it. Let me make a disclaimer before I begin. First off, if you're of the more squeamish sort around depictions of drug use or self-harm, then this might not be the retrospective for you. No judgment here, just want to save you the discomfort. Secondly, Willard has made it very clear that he doesn't want his past or personal life being dug into. I'll introduce some basic information about the artist, but I won't be drawing connections to his own experiences, and instead simply discussing what's in the text. Finally, keep in mind that this is my own personal interpretation of SELF-iSH and its themes. This isn't the end-all, be-all truth of the album, and we can agree to disagree on the conclusions I draw. With that out of the way, let's dig in. While his most recent releases have been solo albums, 2015 and 2016 saw a pair of albums released under the label Willard and the Tapeworms, consisting of Willard and his backing band. Each album had different personnel, and SELF-iSH has a lot of guest vocals, so I'll take this opportunity to put their names up on screen instead of reading them all out. I'll stall for time too, so this is on screen for longer, and you have more time to read it. Okay, that's probably enough. It was 2020's The Normal album that brought him a lot of pop culture prominence, which also led to the first two albums gaining more retroactive recognition. There was a noticeable change from the Tapeworms era sound, going for less complex, chaotic, and scream-heavy rock pieces, and more for softer ballads, culminating in 2022's In Case I Make It, his last major non-live album, which is dominated by ukulele and piano. But then again, it really is hard to put a label on his music. Not only do his latter two albums sound distinct from the first two, every album has its own distinct character and theme, and the sound can even vary from song to song. Same as SELF-iSH, I'd recommend the rest of his discography, as while it may not be the same as what he accomplishes here, it's full of pleasant surprises. Other than that, Willard is a mystery, generally staying off social media and keeping to himself. And that's all there is to say about that. The beginning of the album softly eases you into the experience, introducing some of the core conflicts the protagonist is facing. For now, let's call our singer Plato. It's low-hanging philosophical fruit, but if I need to pick a name, best I choose something that applies. The album as a whole sees Plato embarking on a hero's journey, a classical storytelling structure in which a character starts in a familiar place, but feels the call to adventure. What adventure means can vary, but it's a sign for them to leave their comfort zone and enter the unknown, usually with some sort of supernatural or extraordinary aid. In the unknown, they face challenges and temptations, before finally arriving at the abyss, the place where their old self dies and is reborn as something new. It is here where the hero finds what they have been looking for, even if it isn't what they expected. They sacrifice or atone here, paying the price for their journey, often related to the death of their old self, before returning home. At last, they have come full circle, but they have been irreversibly changed by the journey. To start us off easy with the metaphor is Plato, our hero, declaring his want at the album's beginning. And I'm gonna be myself again. There's not yet much of substance here, but several hints as to the inherent struggle Plato faces. Not remembering 2012 turns out to be very literal, as stated ad nauseum in track 2. And so this blank space leads to the question, who is he? What did he do? And what kind of person was he if he can't remember his actions? If his friends remember but he doesn't, how much of a discrepancy is there between their image of Plato and his personality as it is now? He could keep on living, but he has to know who he is. And by the next time his friends see him, he swears he won't be the person they remember. He'll be himself. But what does that mean? What does it mean to be yourself if the self is ever changing? If the self is malleable to the opinions and perceptions of others? Do our memories make up our personality? And does losing them change us as a person? These questions define Plato's journey into madness, and the album as a whole. I never typically count the intro and outro when analyzing an album. They're a lead-in, an appetizer meant to prepare your stomach for the main event, and a palate cleanser to help you digest when you're through. Mind you, Self and Ish are very important to the hero's journey, but musically, they're hardly indicative of the musical unknown. What makes 2012 odd is that I'd classify it as a false start. It provides some context to what was hinted at in Self, but it doesn't set the tone in the same way that Cotard's Solution does. You hear this more upbeat, stage musical sounding track, with only the lyrics hinting at far darker subject matter. And between Will Wood's breakneck pace and complicated language, I wouldn't blame you for missing most of what he says. A lot of the meaning behind this album, I'm piecing together by reading the lyrics rather than listening. And even then, I still feel lost. Thank you, genius lyrics. But very soon will this false happy feeling wear off, and Cotard's Solution will properly set the stage for the rest of the album. A lot of metaphors in 2012 correspond to religious experience and drug use. Paging Dr. Leary makes it especially clear. Timothy Leary was a professor sacked for giving his students LSD. All the while, the chorus repeats, "I don't remember how I forgot myself," and "I might find myself by retracing my steps." Here, we step back to 2012, when Plato sought and possibly found some sense of enlightenment through hallucinogens. He isn't too sure how successful his journey was, given he doesn't remember any of it, but the only way to find out is by recalling the steps he took to get there. The faux joyous tone of the song fits this sequence of events. Like Plato says, he was a miserable fuck, but it's easy to forget your problems when high out of your mind. And even if it wrecked his life, it abolished his monotony and let him escape reality. It's not an unfamiliar story. Plenty of people lose themselves in drugs to find truth or some sense of relief. But so starts the rabbit hole that would consume him. First off, let's start with the title. Will Wood has some infamously complex song titles, and Self-ish is certainly no exception. The Cotard delusion is a psychotic episode where someone believes they are already dead, while anatta, dukkha, and anicca are the three marks of existence in Buddhism. Anatta is non-self, dukkha is suffering, and anicca is impermanence. Likewise, this song covers the impermanence of the self, and how changing can feel like walking around in the shell of who you were. My favorite song on the album, Cotard plunges straight into the unknown of the hero's journey. And this isn't even theory. A major theme in this song, represented by the darkness, is Plato's fear of the unknown. What lies in 2012, and what kind of person he was, are the mysteries he's searching for in the abyss. But what's scarier than not knowing is what the answer might be. What if he doesn't like what he sees? What if the person he became, and the person people see him as now, aren't something he can handle? His old self is dead now, at least dead to him. To those he knows and loves, they may still see him as he was in 2012, and his desperate plea to make his murder look like a suicide is useless. He's not who he was anymore, and even if he kills himself at this point, they'll still see him as they saw him before. He looks in the mirror, but the person looking back isn't who he's used to, or who he's looking for. There was a Plato before 2012, a Plato during it, and a Plato after. In his eyes, each was a different person. Even if he's recovered from a massive drug bender, he'll never be the same, and is haunted by the spirits of his past. Musically, this song fucking rocks. Those familiar with Will Wood's catalog know that he's no stranger to screaming, but this is the most intense Self-ish ever gets. The beginning stays with the same soft piano as the first two songs, but this time it's different. There's eerie sci-fi sound effects, bringing to mind the evil lab from a B movie, and Wood's voice sounds haunting like a ghost on the wind. The bridge sees the drums kick in, the tension grows, and it sounds like both the band and singer can't hold it back anymore. You can feel the pain as Wood's voice stretches. Before a moment of silence, Then, the dam breaks and hard rock floods in. It doesn't settle till the end of the song, and it goes out with quite the bang.
You're trying to replace yourself. 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 You're trying to replace yourself.
Where do I even start with this title? The Capgras delusion is the idea that a loved one has been replaced with an imposter. Tulpomancy is the art of creating a separate consciousness within the mind. Prosopagnosia is difficulty recognizing faces. Pareidolia is a tendency to see faces in objects. The fusiform gyrus are a region of the brain dedicated to facial recognition. Trauma to this part of the brain can therefore cause these symptoms, and we can interpret the title as thus. A man, likely Plato, with brain damage or impairment, has started to see and create the idea of a person where one isn't there. From here on out, let's call Plato's personification of his past the phantom. Even if they're the same person, the way his unknown past haunts him manifests as another figure entirely, especially here. The phrase, "somebody to replace yourself," echoes continuously throughout the song. And regardless of how much Plato knows about who he was, he's still struggling against this phantom. He tries to bury his past, to bury who he was in 2012. And yet, both in his subconscious mind and in the perception of others, the phantom is still alive. While it does change sometimes in asides to the audience, I and you are made distinct in the song, to refer to Plato and the phantom respectively. As opposed to... Another repeating line in the chorus is, "You'll never take me alive," coupled with threats of suicide in Cotard's solution. His last resort against the phantom seems to be to kill them both. Every line of confidence that Plato is who he wants to be is undercut by the anxiety that he doesn't know or control the phantom. He can prevent it from taking him in life, but even in death, he fears that people will remember the phantom more than they do the current him. Though Cotard introduced the main style of the album, of note is that Capgras is where you start to hear more background singers join Willard, especially during the repeating chorus. Whether intentional or not, it pairs well with the creeping presence of the phantom over Plato's life. It's hard to hear, but during the last chorus, as Will sings, "You'll never take me alive," voices in the background start chanting, "This is not enough to prove it yet. No, I need to hit the bottom." If you've listened to the album before, you'll recognize this as lyrics from track 6, and a kind of foreshadowing as SELF-iSH builds towards its climax. Alright, last one with a super long name. As the title says, it is a song with 5 names. Those are The Song with 5 Names, Soapbox Tau, Checkmate Atheists, Neo-Space Government, and You Can Never Know. There's no deeper meaning behind the number of titles. It went through a lot of prototype versions in rehearsal, and someone probably thought it was funny to throw them all in for the final product. Taoism is mentioned here and there throughout the album, and in the simplest terms I can put it in, Tao is the natural knowledge and wisdom of the universe one must accept to grow as a person. Nothing else really stands out as much as the previous 2 titles did. The pattern's been established enough by now. More piano-heavy reflective sections, fast and lyrically complicated screaming sections, and the repeating hook in the chorus. This song's hook is... You Can Never Know is one of the 5 aforementioned titles, and touches right at the theme of this song. Plato explains, likely to himself, that there is no such thing as objective truth, especially about the self. He's been trying to figure out who he is when he can't remember his past, but he understands on some level there's not an answer to that question. We don't know what the self is, where it comes from, or what its true shape is. Nor would any answer he finds by digging deeper be objectively truthful. If anything, he'll only hurt himself by continuing to dig deeper. And yet, he also knows that won't stop him. Even if learning about his past won't tell him who the Phantom was, he can't just stay how he is. As Capgras established, Plato is haunted. The itching, nagging sensation of not knowing won't let him rest, even if he knows that he cannot know. Once again making religious comparisons, he rationalizes that if no matter what we seek, you'll never find truth. Blind faith in his current path is good enough to keep him sane, even if only momentarily. The background singers continue to chant even more prominently than last time, echoing a similar mantra. The album is building to its climax, and though Plato has passed through the abyss, he has not yet accepted the truths it has brought him. He can't let go, and must die once more before he can be reborn. Note that, in a sense, he has died before. Though these are his thoughts from after his fateful trip in 2012, history is repeating itself. He's seeking knowledge, diving into the unknown that threatens to drive him mad. Even if there are no drugs or psychedelics involved, it's a kind of philosophical relapse, if we're to believe his account of what happened before. And as the songs leading up to track 6 have implied, he's about to reach rock bottom. While Cotard may be my favorite song on the album, in my opinion this is the most pivotal moment. We start calmly, with a slower intro on piano as seen in the first 3 songs, The Journey into the Unknown. Plato recounts the events of 2012 once more, though more metaphorically. He laments that, "It just seems unlikely that it's me who was to blame." Considering the DSM comment, odds are it wasn't entirely a conscious choice to delve into each spiral. Mental illness can force our hand sometimes, consuming our thoughts and actions. However, considering SELF-iSH has seen Plato question who he is, he could also be blaming the Phantom, seeing it as a different person entirely. SELF-iSH already has a unique sound as an album, but something about this song strikes me as Wild West themed. Twangy, reverbing guitar carries us to the chorus, where the chants of the background have now ascended to the foreground. As before, Plato wants to, needs to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, and as the last line states, he's taking the Phantom down with him. The pace increases from here, especially during each chorus. Willard captures panic and desperation, as "gotta get to the bottom of us" gets faster and faster until it hardly sounds like words anymore. More voices join in, like demons, voices in your head, before bellowing out, If you told me he was crying while recording this part, I would believe you. It's real, guttural, screaming at himself, screaming at God, screaming at the Phantom. Plato has not only reached his rock bottom, he's done it again. This quest for knowledge, this quest to find himself, yields no truth or answer. Others have tried to dissuade him, but he describes it as a moral high ground. They can't understand what he's looking for, or his view that he's already gone too far. And that's often how it is. Telling people to just stay positive in the throes of depression doesn't scratch the surface of their problems. Plato's already gone through the logic with himself, and he doesn't care anymore. He must know who he is, he has to. But by the end, rock bottom is not enough, because the answer isn't waiting for him. Even if he knew what happened in 2012, it wouldn't be enough. Now he's back where he was before. As promised, he's still retracing his steps. Even if you've never heard of this album, there's a good chance you might have seen this song pop up on YouTube. After all, that's how I found both SELF-iSH and Willard years ago. As evil or unpredictable as YouTube can be sometimes, the algorithm can make miracles happen, especially for music. It's not the best or most important song on the album, but it's a good musical representation, serving as a medley of lyrics and leitmotifs from all that preceded it. It also strikes a good balance of intensity, rock and roll, little funny sounds, and the background vocals. Herein lie the falling action of the album, where Plato is now recovering from the spiral, and is on his way back out of the unknown. Dark and light, Moonlight and sunshine are used as imagery to represent the phantom and the person Plato wants to be. He reminisces on being afraid of the dark, but recognizes that
The room I'm in is still the same. The shadows have not rearranged, and no, the only thing that's changed is how I see at night.
as time goes by, he hasn't morphed into someone different. He's changed how he sees himself.
I am not the sunshine, I am not the moon at night. Well, who else could I be when I can hardly say?
Who indeed? Throughout his journey, he's tried to be something new, the sunshine. And when that didn't satisfy him, he tried to find out what he used to be, the moon at night. And yet, he's neither. He's different, for sure, but he hasn't completely outgrown the phantom. In the next verse, he makes an allusion to his namesake, Plato's cave. For the uninformed, the philosopher Plato once told a story of people chained in a cave, who watched shadows on the wall all their lives. They came to believe that these shadows were all that existed, but when they finally break their shackles and leave the cave, they realize that they were merely impressions of much grander things beyond their understanding. It was the sun that created their world, and yet they didn't know the first thing about it. Plato, the character, not the philosopher, suggests that he became afraid of the dark when he left the cave, his first introspective journey in 2012. Now, he has left the cave once more, realizing that these distinctions between himself and the phantom are the creation of his mind, and the mysterious nature of the self. Whether or not he's happy about it, he accepts the phantom as part of him. The last chorus is a bittersweet note to end his journey on. He can't see his past, or the true nature of his self. That's not something knowable, and trying to hang on will hurt. And yet, letting go isn't painless. He will move on and be himself, which is who he has been, who he is, and who he strives to be. The song closes out with a reprise from Cotard's Solution.
And if dreams can come true, what does that say about nightmares?
Ish is a reprise of Self, to serve as a bookend to the album and to Plato's journey. As with all heroes' journeys, we end up right back where we started, and yet the journey into the unknown has changed us. When Plato set out, he wanted to be himself again, and while he didn't truly learn what he used to be, he's learned an important lesson that this song states directly.
No, it doesn't matter who I am.
He is still worried, of course. Mental illness isn't something you cure or fix. It's a part of who you are, and the solution, however painful, is learning to live with it. Whatever happens, it's not who Plato is. It's what he does, who he chooses to be in the moment. Where Will's singing in Self was calm and longing, here it's loud with a tinge of sadness. It is sad. There's not always a fairy tale ending in life to our journeys. We want, we worry, we suffer, we learn, and we keep going. Sure, at times, it might seem like there's an easy way out, or that if we just dig in our heels and keep trying, we can reach something that's not there. But the past will always be beyond our reach. All we can do is accept what is, and do our best for what could be. The album ends with an echo of Plato's original wish. That's it. It doesn't cut off from an actual answer. Willard has stated that it's written like that on purpose. He's going to be, to live, to exist. There's no guarantee if he'll be the same as he is today, but all you can do is be. This was a fantastic album to listen to and write about. I'm not the biggest fan of Willard, and I acknowledge that I may have been off the mark in this story I told, but that, at least, is what SELF-iSH means to me, and this music does mean a lot to me. I'll admit, I've cried listening before, and not that many songs reach that level with me. If this video or this album meant something to you, leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. I'm still planning the next video, but I'm always open to suggestions. Until next time, thank you for watching.